My other major concern is with the writing. When they officially announced Silent Hill 2 Remake, they pulled out Akira and Masahiro to let us all know that it was okay. Now, I never really played any of Bloober's other titles, not fully at least, but I am aware that a lot of players aren't fans of their storytelling. I can't speak from experience, but apparently subtlety isn't their strong suit. Now, I don't know what Hiroyuki Iwaku has been up to all these years, but with this much public distrust in Bloober's writing, I don't know why Konami wasn't able to reach out and get him back as well, at the very least to consult on characters and themes. I went deep into this topic on my last Silent Hill video, so I won't rehash too much, but over the last 20 years, the amount of false information and straight up headcanon in Silent Hill lore has completely taken over not just the Silent Hill community, but every source of information on Silent Hill as well. If you want to hear me complain in depth about how much non-canonical information is all over the Silent Hill wiki, by all means, go see that video. I'm sure Akira and Masahiro are both giving story input, but the fact that they don't have the actual story guy right beside the art director and composer had me worried from the start about the story. And with little snippets of story we've gotten so far, especially with the new gameplay trailer, has confirmed my fears. So far, we haven't seen much of Angela, and we've seen nothing of Eddie, and I think for good reason, because what we've seen so far with Maria and Laura is way off character. And in the case of Maria, it breaks pre-established rules in the town's supernatural workings. While I'm not expecting every bit of dialogue to be the same, I'm expecting them to at least improve or expand upon it. Either these scenes are heavily edited or cut down, because these scenes make no sense, especially within context of where they take place in the game. The scenes in the hospital, the Remakes version is not just missing lines of dialogue, but character nuance that the original provided.
Laura, why do you keep running away from me? And how do you know about Mary?
Now Laura isn't concerned about how James knows Laura's name.
Huh? You know my name?
There's no mention of Eddie.
Eddie told me.
That big fat blabbermouth.
And when asking about Mary, there's no setup for James' outburst, or Laura's reaction.
How do you know about Mary?
What's the big deal?
Why can't you just tell me?
You gonna yell at me if I don't?
No, I won't.
Instead, we just have Laura burst out,
Fine, don't believe me. See if I care!
as if there's any kind of pre-established connection between these two characters yet. The conversation goes by so quick that no connection has been made yet. Because in the original, Laura is still always one step ahead of James. This is supposed to be the first time he gets to actually talk with her. It seems like her character is getting a complete rewrite, because in the very next scene, everything from her demeanor and intent are way different. In the original, Laura is more carefree, and her emotions are more intense. When she tells James about Mary's letter, there's a sense of urgency in her voice, and James clings to that energy because it's another clue for him.
Wait, there's something I gotta get.
Later, okay?
But it's really important.
What is it?
A letter from Mary.
Huh?
I wanna go get it, is that okay?
Yes.
This new version, however, she says it's important, but there's no urgency in either of their voices.
But there's something I gotta get. It's important.
What is it?
A letter. From Mary.
What?
I hid it. In there.
Their intent is still the same, to lock James inside a room, but in the original version, it's because she's just goofing around and playing. She doesn't see the monsters like James does. It's not until James has an outburst at her again that she gets angry.
I think I'll just leave you like this.
You snotty little brat! Open up!
Why, you
Laura?
hurt me.
And then leaves him locked in the room. In the new version, not only does James seem to not care about getting a clue for the only reason he came to Silent Hill,
Okay, wait here.
But goddamn, now I know what people say when they talk about Bloober Team's lack of subtlety. I mean, how many times is Laura gonna yell, "Ya fart face"?
A big lying fart face. See a fart face?
Laura!
Of course, all the live reactions to the trailer got a big cheer when she said it.
Say the line, Bart!
Fart face. Fart face. See a fart face? Yay!
Changes in a dialogue like this, it's nothing major, but the subtlety compounded together can change a character as a whole over time. And one major character trait about Laura is that she supposedly doesn't see any monsters in Silent Hill. This is hinted at in both versions.
There are all sorts of strange things around here. I can't believe you haven't even gotten a scratch on you.
Why should I? Let go!
Sorry, Laura, but I can't let you just run around this place. You might get hurt.
Hurt by what?
It's also hinted at anytime you're around her, because every zone she's in immediately becomes a safe zone. This isn't the case with Eddie and Angela. Not only do they have monsters right outside the doors of the rooms they're in, but we've seen them with their own monsters. Angela's abstract daddy and the bodies that Eddie shot. But with Laura, third floor hallway in Woodside Apartments, no monsters. Back alley from Blue Creek's apartment to the Rosewater Park, no monsters. First floor, Brookhaven Patient Hall, no monsters. Or at least until she leaves us. First floor, Brookhaven Hospital Otherworld, when we see her walking by outside, no monsters. Lakeview Hotel, when we first meet her, no monsters. But once Laura leaves James, now we have doormen in the hallway. When James retrieves his items and goes downstairs to the music box in the hotel lobby, all monsters disappeared and stay gone all the way to room 312. I feel like I'm intentionally leaving one more Laura encounter out, as if I was saving it for last. Oh, right, Pete's Bolorama. Upon entering the building, Maria protests and refuses to enter, choosing instead to stay outside and wait. You know, the same lady who earlier, just one zone ago, begged James not to leave her alone with all these monsters.
Me?
You were gonna just leave me?
No, but...
With all these monsters around?
No, I just...
Now she wants to be left alone with all those monsters.
I didn't come here to play, you know.
Hurry back, okay?
What is it that makes her choose that solitude and danger over just coming inside? Oh, right. It's because this is what Maria actually is. Let's talk about Maria. Let's talk about what she is, how she works, and what her and Laura can tell us about how Silent Hill's supernatural power works. It's not 100% clear where Maria came from, but given all the information we have from the first 3 games, there are 3 schools of thought. One is that Maria and some, if not all monsters, used to be people, or at the very least, was transformed from something else pre-existing in town. 2, that these creatures are manifested by the town's supernatural power out of thin air. And 3, that people are just seeing things like a hallucination. There's evidence for all of them, but most of that evidence can be interpreted in multiple ways. For example, the biggest one people like to use is the dialogue with Vincent in the church's library in Silent Hill 3.
You come here and enjoy spilling their blood and listening to them cry out. You feel excited when you step on them and snuff out their lives.
Are you talking about the monsters?
Monsters? They look like monsters to you? Oh no.
Vincent's anger towards Heather over killing these creatures doesn't necessarily mean that he's saying that they are or were people. Later in the game, he remarks to Claudia that the aesthetic of the other world is in bad taste.
If this really is the work of God, then I'd say she has lousy taste.
And more towards Claudia's liking.
Although I admit that this atrocious scenery is all yours.
meaning that this is a perspective thing. I might love the art of Francis Bacon, but it might terrify somebody else. It's perspective.
I kind of like this little dog.
Heather asks Claudia about the monsters in the beginning of the game,
Those weird monsters?
and she responds with just,
They've come to witness the beginning.
does that mean that they're just cult members coming to a mall of their own free will? Did they ride in on the Silent Hill bus for a field trip with Claudia as they sang the Silent Hill song? Or does Claudia, just like Vincent, see these creatures as something holy or angelic, gracing us with their presence? After Harry dies in Silent Hill 3, and Claudia tells Heather that
He's the one who killed your father. I merely gave the order.
does that mean that this is a twisted cult member? Or does Claudia have a level of control over these creatures in the other world?
I don't have powers like you two.
It can go either way. It's never really made clear. Even all the way back in Silent Hill 1, before Lisa transforms, she says,
I get it now. Why I'm still alive even though everyone else is dead. I'm not the only one who's still walking around. I'm the same as them. I just hadn't noticed it before.
this too could go either way. She could be saying that she's the only one left to turn into a monster, or she could already be dead, and this is just a memory of Lisa, a manifestation of who Lisa was, which explains why she's trapped in the hospital, why she couldn't leave, why Harry would sometimes randomly teleport to her in a room. She could mean that her, just like the other nurses, are manifestations drawn up by Alessa's subconscious. Another bit of evidence for people just seeing things is in Angela's final scene. She confuses James for her mother.
Mama! Mama, I was looking for you. Now you're the only one left. Maybe then I can rest. You're not my mama. It's you.
And later, James says,
It's hot as hell in here.
for Angela to turn around and say,
You see it too. For me, it's always like this.
which it wasn't in all of our previous encounters with her. And because of that, you could say that she always sees fire and James didn't, or that the fire just gradually increased as she progressed through the town, and now it's always like this. It can always be interpreted in several ways. Back on the subject of Maria, the main bit of evidence people use for Maria being someone else beforehand are through posters in the game. There's a poster of what looks like Maria in Heaven's Night at the start of Born from a Wish, and there's a Heaven's Night poster in the opening bathroom with Maria's photo. So you could say that she started out as a dancer from Heaven's Night and was changed by the town. Or you could say that those posters, just like the rest of the landscape in the game, is manifested there for the character. If she's supposed to look exactly like Mary, she wouldn't have been looking like that originally, so why are these posters using her exact likeness now, instead of who she was then? In Born from a Wish, given the fact that it takes less than an hour to complete, it's safe to say that this side story starts around the same time that James walks into Silent Hill. This could be when she was born, maybe the poster on the bathroom wall are at least partially real, and it inspired James's idea of Maria, or rather the town's manifestation of her. In my opinion, when it comes to the subject of what the characters see and experience, I think it could be a little bit of all three. I mean, it wouldn't make sense for James to see holes in the floor that don't exist, and then proceed to jump down them, but it makes sense that Angela might see the wrong person. So what's the point that I'm getting at with all this rambling? The original games were very open-ended in terms of how the town works with its manifestations of monsters and the other world. They were usually pretty vague, but they still had rules and patterns. For example, we might not know exactly how monsters are manifested to life, but we know how they work. In Silent Hill 2, we know that the monsters are manifested for specific people, pulled somehow from their subconscious, and then to stay exclusively around that specific person. In other words, James sees his monsters, Eddie sees his, Angela sees hers, and Laura doesn't see any. And on rare conditions, there can be overlap, like with Eddie's victims or Angela's abstract daddy. But we only see them within close proximity, as they are dealing with them in some way. For example, we never see Eddie's monsters alive. We only see the aftermath of when he's killed one and he's still present. And it's the same with Angela. After the stairway scene with her, once we turn around and leave the room, if we try to go back, the stairway is gone, replaced with the hotel. The burning stairway is gone because Angela's gone. In the case of Maria, we don't know her origin for certain, but we do know how she works. We know that she can die and be reborn. We don't know how she comes back, but we know she does, and she retains her memories and consciousness throughout the process. We know that the longer she exists, the more memories she gains from Mary. And born from a wish, the moment she learns James's name, when Ernest says,
"That James, he's a bad man,"
she replies,
James. Yes. I know.
he's looking for the you that isn't you.
Watch out. The gap in the door. It's a separate reality. The only me is me. Are you sure the only you is you?
He's looking for the you that isn't you.
and she already has memories of Laura before ever meeting her. When examining Amy's bedroom, she sees a teddy bear and says, "I bet Laura would love it. She loves bears." Laura? Who am I talking about? So we know that her memories aren't being pulled directly from James, but possibly Mary herself somehow, because these are things that James doesn't know. As Maria gains more memories, we see a shift in her personality. Who Maria is at the start of Born from a Wish is not the same person that James meets in Rosewater Park. She's changed. She's evolved. She was born with a basic yearning to not be alone and to be with someone, if only just to be around them. It's why she tries so hard to see Ernest Baldwin in the Baldwin mansion. Both Ernest and his daughter Amy are dead. They are either ghosts that are haunting the mansion, or possibly just memories being drawn up by the town. I believe this to be more of the case because Ernest and Amy are almost like a mental training for Maria to later care for James and Laura, to fill the role of Mary as those memories of Mary slowly take over. As the story progresses, not only does Maria gain more memories of Mary, but she also begins to take on her physical illness as well, needing to rest in the hospital and take medication. And later, after her second death, having the same disfigurement as Mary in the prison cell. After her first death in the hospital, the next time we see her is in the labyrinth, in a prison cell. I believe this is the most real that we see her as who and what she really is, from a character perspective. By this point, she's gained a lot, if not all, of Mary's memories, and we see her shifting between herself, Mary, and whatever James wants her to be. The scene reminds me a lot of Heather, actually, in Silent Hill 3. Her memories of her past life slowly creeping in as the game progresses, and by the end, Heather remembers all of it. Her life as Alessa, her life as Cheryl, and who she is now. Which, now that I think about it, are they both not born from the town? Heather more so through Alessa's will, while Maria is from the town itself, in the aftermath of the events of Silent Hill 1. My understanding has always been that Alessa was more of a medium to the town's power rather than being supernatural herself. She could tap into it and even slightly control it. It wasn't until after Dahlia and the cult's rituals that connection she had got blown wide open, opening a floodgate of spiritual and psychic energy, resulting in the uncontrolled mess that Harry Mason encounters in the first game. I'll never understand why people continue to mix up the lore of the games with the movie, because in the games, Alessa didn't do all of this in a spite of rage. The monsters in Otherworld were pulled from her subconscious by the town. That's why every monster in Silent Hill 1 was related to Alessa in some form. That's why the locations and their Otherworld designs were so tied to her memories. And after the end of the game, when Alessa is gone, so are her monsters, and so is her hell. But that spiritual and psychic energy still lingers and flows freely now through the town. This is why and how it's able to now draw upon those specific individuals within Silent Hill 2. If Alessa was able to split herself in two with the power of the town and then again create a new reincarnation of herself at the end of the game with that same power, it makes sense that the town can also manifest a living being like Maria. Heather being a lot more pure and real because Alessa consciously willed it via her connection with the town, but Maria, she most likely was manifested in the same sense as a monster, hence the reason she turns into one at the end of the game, almost in a similar fashion, if not in the same exact way as the memory of Alessa in Silent Hill 3. And if Team Silent had the time, it would have been the same with Lisa as well in Silent Hill 3. Supposedly she was meant to be in Silent Hill 3 with Valtiel, but due to time constraints, the Fukuro model was reused in her place. So now we have an idea of what Maria is, a monster manifested by the town's spiritual psychic energy in the likeness of Mary and slowly giving the memories of Mary. Unlike a normal monster, it seems like her full creation is a slow process in that regard because she's more complex. And when she dies, that energy that made up who she was stays contained somehow in spiritual form, and the process begins again, where she's then physically manifested again, and then again, and then again. Pyramid Head being another form of this. This creature probably isn't as sentient as Maria, but still more so than your average monster. He has intent, he has drive. Similar to Maria, he's also born from a wish. While Maria was born from a wish to see Mary again, Pyramid Head was born from a wish for James to see himself be punished. This is why every encounter we see with Pyramid Head, he's killing monsters. Much like Maria's training with the Baldwins, Pyramid Head is training to kill Maria to punish James. We first see him as a glowing red figure behind bars in the room next to those bars, which allows us to get to the other side, has a dead body inside, a body of James. There's always been a lot of theories about this, and I have no concrete evidence as to what it means. Could Pyramid Head have been born out of this body? Was this his first kill? Was this James' doppelganger put there for this new Pyramid Head to kill? Who knows? We see Pyramid Head again a few apartments down, this time assaulting more monsters in a kitchen. Pyramid Head is learning, less so much as Maria, but it's still learning what to do. When he encounters James for the first time, he also seems confused. This is the only time we see Pyramid Head flail his arms around and moving in this manner, almost like he's still learning how to walk, getting accustomed to this form. Then when he approaches James in the closet, there's almost this sense of curiosity when he grabs his helmet. Then again, we see him in the end of the apartments, assaulting another monster, before walking away and opening the path for James to continue. One interesting note about Pyramid Head's fights in this is that they're all time-based. He has no health bar, he leaves or dies after a specific time. I don't believe this was an act of laziness, because the other bosses in this game do have life bars. To me, this design is a part of his character. He doesn't need to be defeated, just wait it out. His fights seem more like a test of how much James wants to live. Even with his few encounters in the wild, he is invincible. James can't kill him. That's not his purpose. So, both Maria and Pyramid Head are manifestations of James's subconscious wishes and desires. They both seem to have specific roles to play and rules to follow. And every encounter can teach us a little bit about those rules and rules. In terms of interactions with Pyramid Head, the apartment fire escape, the hospital rooftop, the hospital basement, and his final fight, in all those scenes, Pyramid Head is acting as a guide for progression. You can't leave the apartment without his help. You can't access a portion of the hospital and then later see Laura without his help. In all of his non-confrontational moments, it's still a sign of progression, that James is going in the right direction. When we see him in the apartment hallway behind bars, to progress, you need to enter the room right next to those bars. The hospital basement, he's focused on Maria, not James, although that spear can get you both, and he's herding you down that hallway into an elevator that automatically closes on James so that he can continue on his own. When in the Historical Society, we see his portrait, and then in the very next room is our stairway to the prison and labyrinth. In the fight with him at the end, you can't leave the room until he allows it. The fight again is another timed event. You don't need to fire a shot at him. And when he feels that James truly no longer needs him, does he finally finish himself off and gives James the keys to exit and progress forward to his final confrontation with Maria, where Pyramid Head hopes that James now has the fortitude to not just see her for what she is, but also stand against her. I don't think that this makes Pyramid Head good and Maria evil though. Throughout everything we learn from the game, she is a conscious being, but the town itself has her programmed to want James. It's all she's allowed to know, and she runs on that instinctual desire, doing everything in her power to obtain it. We also notice that every time Maria dies, she comes back faster. After the hospital, we don't see her again until the labyrinth. After the labyrinth, we don't see her again until the hotel with Pyramid Head. After Pyramid Head, we see her again in the very next zone, 2 rooms later. Pyramid Head cannot kill her. Not permanently. But can James do it? Yes, but again, not through bullets. While Maria does have a life bar, and you do defeat her in her monster form at the end, whether or not she stays dead is up to your ending. This is because James has to make the same conscious decision to not need her anymore.
Maria, I'm done with you.
Just like he did with Pyramid Head.
I was weak. That's why I needed you. Needed someone to punish me for my sins. But that's all over now. I know the truth. Now it's time to end this.
And Maria knows this, after just witnessing it happen a moment ago with Pyramid Head. Yeah, she was dead during this whole speech and fight with Pyramid Heads, but considering she still isn't dead, let's assume that whatever energy that she's made up of was aware of what was going on. Because in each ending, you see Maria trying different approaches to keep James.
But I can be yours. I'll be here for you forever. And I'll never yell at you or make you feel bad. That's what you wanted.
In all of them but one ending, she fails. James tells her he no longer needs her, and then he finishes her off. But in one ending, in one particular ending, Maria has a different tactic. To take on the persona of Mary, convincing James that he no longer wants Mary instead.
Don't make excuses, James. I know I was a burden on you. You must have hated me. That's why you got rid of me.
It's true. I may have had some of those feelings.
This time, after James kills Maria, he still hasn't denounced her. And she's able to not just continue to live, but she's able to see James again and be with him. Albeit still trapped in the curse from the town, and she's still afflicted with Mary's sickness. This relationship between James, Maria, and Pyramid Head isn't explicitly stated in the game, but there is enough subtlety in their interactions to extract all this information. And as I've said before, Bloober Team having Akira and Masahiro to consult is good, but without the game's original writer, Hiroyuki Iwaku, how much can we be guaranteed that these characters, creatures, the world, and its workings all be faithfully remade in the original vision, like they said? In the game, Maria has a strong desire to protect Laura, but she never interacts with her.
What about Laura? Did you find her?
In fact, every time she's in the same area as Laura, she seems to find herself in an excuse to not be around her. Outside of Pete's Bolorama, Maria refuses to go inside. She says that she'd rather stay outside because she hates bowling, but we know this isn't the real reason. We just picked Maria up moments ago, who protested that James takes her along, that she didn't want to be left alone.
With all these monsters around?
No,
Yet she chooses to stay outside with those monsters all alone, moments later. This behavior goes against who she is and what she wants, which is to stay by James's side. And after Laura leaves the bowling alley and James follows, Maria comes out of nowhere.
Did a little girl run out of here?
Yeah, she was too fast for me.
Was she? Was she too fast for you, Maria? Later in the hospital, Maria isn't feeling too good and needs to lie down. It's a bit of a coincidence that in that same room is the roof key where you meet Pyramid Head, who knocks you off the roof into a previously inaccessible location that gives you the final clue that you need to solve a puzzle that lets you go see Laura. Sure, it's quite a setup, but you can't run into Laura until Maria separates herself from James. But it's also another convenient setup as well, that the next time James sees Laura again, outside of the hospital, it's right after him and Maria are separated again at the basement elevator. Pyramid Head, this time, holding her back, forcing James to progress alone. Now, if we go all the way back to when I was talking about Laura, I said that if you examine every scene we encounter her in, there are no monsters, or at least not within proximity of her. The hallway outsides are always clear, the room she is in is always clear, and it's not until after she leaves that those monsters show up out of thin air. We don't see any in the hotel until Laura leaves the piano room to find her second letter. James is alone again, and when he re-enters the hallway, he's immediately attacked by a monster. This pattern is there for every encounter we have with Laura. This includes our main two monsters, Maria specifically. If she doesn't have an excuse of her own,
I hate bowling.
then it's an ailment.
James. Wait a minute. I'm kind of tired.
Or she's taken out of the equation entirely.
Open up!
So this is why this scene in particular bothers me so much.
There.
Laura! Wait!
It's okay. We don't want to hurt you.
God damn it.
It's a minor nitpick at a glance, but after all the subtle rules that these characters and monsters follow, it becomes a glaring change in not just character, but also how these monsters and the town work. Why is Maria attempting to interact with Laura? Yes, in the original, she had a care for Laura that she didn't understand, due to her implanted memories of Mary, but something always forced her to be just outside of her range.
Yeah, she was too fast for me.
Not to mention just how weird it would be for Laura to see a freaking doppelganger of Mary walking around with James.
It's you!
One argument I heard in favor of this new additional scene is that Laura doesn't respond until after she's hit with James's flashlight, and not to Maria talking. So it's possible she can't see or hear Maria, and that only James can see Maria. I call bogus on this interpretation because James sees Eddie's monsters too, if only in the aftermath of when he kills them. He also sees Angela's monsters and helps her kill one. He visits both Eddie and Angela's otherworld towards the end of the game, Eddie's meat locker and Angela's burning stairway. The stairway in particular disappearing from existence the moment Angela leaves. These are physical manifestations happening in real time. That doesn't mean people don't see things differently from time to time, like Angela hallucinating James as her mother.
Mama! Mama, I was looking
But saying that Laura doesn't see monsters because they don't exist goes against everything we know about monster placement in the game. If they wanted us to know that she just doesn't see them, then they would have made that obvious by placing them in the same room with her, which never happens. Instead, the monsters and otherworld keeps its distance from her, almost as if she had an aura around her. At the end of the hospital stage, when James sees Laura outside in the streets, it's still the otherworld inside the hospital, but outside, it's normal, albeit nighttime. Another strange observation that I just now thought of is that there are only 2 actual otherworld transformations in the game, and by that I mean an abrupt change from one world to the other, not the slow descent into madness that we see in the historical society to the prison and labyrinth, but in the hospital and then again in the hotel, both of which happens after Laura leaves James emotionally. In the hospital in the original, she leaves James angry after he yells at her for the second time, and she yells,
Why, you...
Laura?
You hurt me!
and then leaves. After that monster fight, James passes out and wakes up in the otherworld courtyard. She's angry at him when she leaves. The next time this happens is after James watches the VHS tape. Laura enters the room, James tells her the truth, and Laura lashes out at him.
I hate you, James! I hate you! I hate you! I hate you!
And once she leaves James, when he exits the hotel room, it's now the other world. Instantly. It's possible you could say that the town's drawing from her emotions for the otherworld changes on James, at least partially. And if that's the case, the change in the remake of her leaving on a different tone changes that.
There's something in here.
Sure there is. A big lying fart face. See a fart face?
Laura! Laura!
I know. I have a problem. I read way too much into these tiny little things from the original game. And yeah, maybe some of this is just my own personal headcanon. But it bothers me so much to see these changes in character breaking these pre-established rules and patterns set by the original game. Because without the original writer to do hard confirmations on all the small nuances, we aren't getting something faithfully remade in the original vision. I tried to look up to see who actually is writing the script for this game, and the only credits I've seen so far was this lady, who said some pretty confusing things about the original game.
So when making a game with static cameras, you as a designer have much more control over what players sees, where they go, and so on. The change for the third-person perspective was a challenge. That being said, it's a chance for us to expand this world, to show the players new elements that were previously inaccessible, and just make this game richer.
My first reaction to this when the transmission went live was, what are you talking about?
So when making a game with static cameras, you as a designer have much more control over what players sees, where they go, and so on. The change for the third-person perspective was a challenge.
Yeah, there's a few static shots in the game for the sake of atmosphere and tone, but 99% of the game is overhead camera.
Are you confusing me with someone else?
Resident Evil was static camera, but Silent Hill always has been 3D. Always. I'm not trying to put her on blast because usually these games have several writers. I just find the quote to be concerning. To bring up something that's not even in the original game, and for Bloober and Konami to not even notice or flag that bit to be cut or edited, sends off all kinds of red flags in the writing department. I mean, I can only hope that before they sat down and wrote this script, that they wrote out a map of how the town works, how the monsters work, who these characters are, what kind of rules and patterns that they all had to follow in the original game. But without Hiroyuki Iwaki to write all that down for them, who is? I would hope that it would be Akira and Masahiro, but are they going to listen to them? Recent articles state that Bloober and the original team clashed on ideas on what to do with the game, that Akira and Masahiro wanted to change things and Bloober wanted to stay the same. I've heard people say that this sounds more like damage control, because if you're remaking the game, yeah, we can all expect you to expand on things, and I don't see Masahiro Ito saying that he wants to make a whole new game when he spent the last 10 plus years on Twitter defending the game's canon. Am I worried about this game? Like, 100%. Silent Hill 2 is one of my favorite games, and has been for over 20 years. I still have my original copy, I still play it, I love watching Let's Plays of it, I love seeing other people's interpretations through their own analysis videos. The original Team Silent games have consumed a huge unhealthy portion of my life, so yeah, I'm very worried about this remake. Even more so now since Square Enix has been making the FF7 remake trilogy. That was advertised as a remake, and I loved about 80% of that game. It got the characters right, it dove deep into the characters' relationships and backstories, and then these things kept showing up, the MacGuffin ghosts. And as the story progressed, it became apparent that this was no longer a remake. It wasn't bad enough that they butchered the original final act in Midgar with the slaughter in Shinra Tower being toned down, and redoing the entire President Shinra scene, which was iconic. But once the story changed its focus on the nature of these new ghost creatures, they became the focal point of the final act. And after seeing what happened in Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, they are now the main focus on the entire trilogy. Fate monsters that control destiny. Anything that happened in the original game was thrown in the background as nostalgia bait. These ghost things take over the game's story so much to the point that the most iconic scene in Final Fantasy VII, you can barely even see it because there's so many of these stupid fucking things on the screen. Square Enix has made me hate Final Fantasy now. And Konami already made me hate the Silent Hill series since 2006. They can't take away the original copies of the game, and as long as I keep my hands on a functional PS2, I can continue to play those games as they were. I just worry that Silent Hill 2 Remake is going to go down the same path as Final Fantasy VII Remake. It might be good, people might even like it, but will it be true to the source material? Will it be a good remake? Or will it be a fan fiction? A sloppy retelling from somebody who does not understand or know the source material?